Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Hidetsugu and Kairi, a 5 mana 5/4 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So on every ETB you will get a Brainstorm for free, and when it dies exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value, and if it's an instant or sorcery card you may cast it without paying its mana cost. In this Dimir deck we want to deathloop Hidetsugu and Kairi as often as possible to get a bunch of enter the battlefield and leave the battlefield triggers, and with those leave the battlefield triggers we want to fire off a bunch of powerful instant and sorceries for free, while we also ping down our opponents. But first we need to ramp this powerful team out, so we play Dimir's Signet, a 2 mana artifact, and you can pay 1 mana and tap it to add Dimir colors to your mana pool. We play Arcane Signet, a 2 mana artifact, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Fort Vessel, a 2 mana artifact, which says you have no maximum hand size and you can tap it to add 1 colorless mana. Talisman of Dominance, a 2 mana artifact, and you can tap it to add 1 colorless mana. Or you can tap it to add either blue or black mana to your mana pool, but Talisman of Dominance deals 1 damage to you. Not really a mana rock in this deck, but I still added it to the section is Machine God's Effigy, a 4 mana artifact, and you may have it enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact and it has tap to add 1 blue mana. You can also tap itself to add 1 blue mana, but in many cases we will let this one enter as Hidetsugu and Kairi, and due to legendary rule we will have to sacrifice one of them. And probably the most interesting mana rock in this deck is Sion's Board, a 2 mana artifact with Morbid, so at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a soul counter on Sion's Board. Furthermore, you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of soul counters on Sion's Board. Spend this mana only to cast instant, sorcery, demon and spirit spells. Luckily this deck plays around a bunch of very expensive instants and sorceries, and Hidetsugu and Kairi might get really expensive at some point, so Sion's Board does a lot of work for us in this deck. While we are playing our mana rocks, we want to play a bunch of removal spells to keep the board in check, and also to slow our opponents down with progressing with their board. So we play Rapid Hybridization, a 1 mana blue instant, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated, and that creature's controller creates a free green frog lizard creature token. We play Sheoldred's Edict, a 2 mana instant, choose 1, either each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature, a creature token, or a planeswalker. We play Pongify, a 1 mana instant, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated, and its controller creates a free green ape creature token. We play Vona's Hunger, a 3 mana instant with Ascent, and each opponent sacrifices a creature, and if you have the City's Blessing, instead each opponent sacrifices half the creatures he or she controls rounded up. We play Liliana's Triumph, a 2 mana instant, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and if you control a Liliana planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. We play Soul Shatter, a 3 mana instant, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Once we have brought enough mana rocks onto the battlefield and kept our opponent's boards in check, we can commit Hidetsugu and Kairi to the battlefield, and after that we want to play a bunch of clone effects to get even more Hidetsugus and Kairis, for more ETB triggers but also leave triggers due to the legend rule, and then fire off our powerful instant and sorcery spells. We play a few of the following clones: Waxen Shape Thief, a 4 mana 0/0 will flash, and you may have it enter as a copy of an artifact or creature you control. You can also cycle this one for 2 mana. A very powerful aura that we want to commit on Hidetsugu and Kairi is Mirror Mockery, a 2 mana enchantment aura, and whenever enchanted creature attacks you may put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature, exile that token at the end of combat. We don't care about that exiling because we will have to sacrifice it immediately due to legend rule, but we will get exactly what we wanted. We play Self-Reflection, a 6 mana sorcery, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and you can also reuse this card from your graveyard for its flashback costs of 4 mana. We play Cackling Counterpart, a 3 mana instant, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and you can also play this one from your graveyard for 7 mana as its flashbacks costs. We play C-Double, a 4 mana instant, and this spell can't be copied. You can choose one, but if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. You can either copy target spell, you may choose new targets for the copy, and you can create a token that's a copy of target creature. And last but not least, we also play Quasi-Duplicate, a 3 mana sorcery, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and it also has Jumpstart, so you can recast this card from your graveyard for its mana cost and discarding a card in addition to its other costs. Of course, there are a bunch of more other different clone effects in this deck, so make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below. And now let's talk about the powerful instant and sorcery cards that we wanna hit with Hidetsugu's Leaf Trigger. We play Skull Storm, a 9 mana sorcery. When you cast a spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. And it says each opponent sacrifices a creature and each opponent who can't loses half their life rounded up. We want to fire off Rise of the Eldrazi, a 12 mana sorcery. This spell can't be countered, and you destroy target permanent, target player draws 4 cards, and you take an extra turn after this one. But for all of this value you will have to exile this card. We play Mnemonic Deluge, a 9 mana sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Copy that card 3 times. You may cast the copies without paying their mana costs, and you exile Mnemonic Deluge. Let's go for a few extra turns. Allrun's Epiphany, a 7 mana sorcery. Create 2 1/1 bluebird creature tokens with flying. Take an extra turn after this one and exile Allrun's Epiphany. You can foretell this card for 2 mana in 1 turn and cast it for its foretell costs of 6 mana in a later turn. We want to Breach the Multiverse, a 7 mana sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control, and then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. Last but not least, we play Army of the Damned, an 8 mana sorcery. Create 13 tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and this card also has flashback for 10 mana, so you can cast it from your graveyard for 10 mana. You want to win more? You get it. We play Flare of Denial, a 3 mana instant. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost, and you counter target spell. There are a few persist and undying spells in this list, so you can just sacrifice Hidetsugu and Kairi for its Leaf Trigger out of nowhere to counter a powerful spell, and also make them re-enter with cards like Undying Evil. Just as Flare of Denial, we play Flare of Malice, a 4 mana instant. You may sacrifice a non-token black creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Another powerful free spell that does a lot of work in this deck simply because we keep all of our opponents in check, and we will get another Leaf Trigger of Hidetsugu and Kairi. And last but not least, we play Saw in Half, a 3 mana instant. Destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power, and their base toughness is half that creature's toughness, round up each time. Just with this cheap instant spell alone, you will get 2 Leave the Battlefield triggers and also 2 ETB triggers, which can end in a very powerful turn that might turn around the game for your goods, so definitely a card worth playing. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Hidetsugu and Kairi. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.